start there. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We are, for those who don't know me, I'm Lise Robinson. I'm one of the partners and financial advisors at TrinityPoint Wealth. Our presentation today is titled A Smarter Way to Give. Since we work with many individuals, families who are prone to charitable giving, as well as many foundations, endowments, 501c3 type organizations, we're really familiar with all the reasons to want to give, as well as all the reason to the giving is needed. So we thought it'd be a good time of year to bring this topic to light as we head into the final few months of the year. We're thinking about tax saving strategies, budgeting and whatnot. How can we maximize our giving was kind of the idea of bringing this to you. So with that, we have Margot Navins and Mario Villarreal from Fidelity Charitable. We've been working with Margot for several years now. She's kind of our go-to resource when it comes to charitable planning and strategies and whatnot. So who better to present to you today? Before we get started, I just thought I would mention some general housekeeping. As far as the presentation goes, maybe 20 minutes or so, Margot will talk about the topic at hand. There'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. There should be, I'm not a technological guru, but there should be a chat box to type in a question if you have it, or save it till the end and we'll answer everybody's questions and we'll work with it that way, I guess. Sound all right, Margot?
That all sounds good.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I'll kick it off to you.
All right, I will take it away. Lise and the TrinityPoint team, thank you very much for having Mario, for having myself here today. It's hard to believe, right, as it's October 19th, and year end is right around the corner in our world at Fidelity Charitable. It's called giving season, right? It's the best time of year, and in our world, it's certainly the busiest time of year. So we're delighted to be here today. As Lise said, for those of you, the chat button should be right in the center of your screen at the bottom. Please throw in questions if you have, if you want to share anything about your goals for the day. The chat can be a spot where you can feel free, feel open, feel comfortable to share as you'd like. Again, I'm joined here by my partner, Mario Villarreal. Together, we are dedicated resources for all of you, both advisors and clients in the tri-state area. So as Lise said, I've been working with the TrinityPoint team for many years. I've been with Fidelity Charitable 13 years and really serve as a dedicated local resource in all things related to charitable planning. So in the time that we have today, we're going to take a very quick step back, do a quick snapshot of the charitable landscape. A lot has changed in COVID and in the last, 18 months roughly. So a quick snapshot of what we're seeing in the charitable landscape. We're going to highlight for all of you, what are the different vehicles? What are the different tax strategies as you're rolling up your sleeves and sharpening up your pencils before year end? What are some of the things that you can do, take action on to be smarter, more efficient in the way you give? And we're going to take you through a quick online demo of what the Fidelity Charitable Donor Advised Fund looks like as well. So just a bit about who we are at Fidelity Charitable. Some of you may be familiar, but in taking a quick step back, we're a 501c3 public charity. So think of your alma mater, think of the local soup kitchen. Those are charities, and Fidelity Charitable is a charity too. Mission is very simple. Charitable mission is simple. Make it easy for folks like you to be more efficient and effective in the way you support the causes that matter most to you. Just a bit about us. We turned 30. It's our 30th birthday this year. And we're really, really proud that over our time, our donors have granted out of their accounts over $50 billion to over 150,000 nonprofit organizations. So as I mentioned, I'm joined today by my partner, Mario Villarreal. Mario, if you want to jump to the next slide, you can take us through and give some of those landscape updates.
Sounds great. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, good, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Margot. So with the pandemic being, still top of mind, still in the thick of it, it's interesting to take a look at how donors have responded. So particularly our donors designated nearly $500 million in grants specifically for pandemic relief in 2020. It's pretty interesting stats along those lines. We've seen a tremendous increase in support for the human services sector. Now that's going to include items like organizations like food banks, homeless shelters, but that sector as a whole rose 12 percentage points compared to the same timeframe in 2019. So pretty interesting to see how donors are responding, but particularly for that specific stat, it's interesting, there wasn't a redistribution, right? Folks didn't say, okay, instead of having my 12% to my church or my alma mater, I'm now going to send it to the human services. What they did was they increased their overall giving to address those specific needs for the pandemic specifically. So that was just a pretty interesting takeaway, again, with COVID still being top of mind and being in the thick of it. That was a pretty interesting stat line from the donors that we were able to work with. Now, putting that overall conversation into context, we at Fidelity Charitable, Margot and I, get a pretty amazing front row seat to get to watch Americans donate from last year over $471 billion to different charitable organizations. So we're pretty fortunate in that regard. I know initially when I heard that stat line, it was easy to think that the majority must be coming from your massive corporations, right? But pretty interesting to note on the right-hand side, almost 70% of that 470 billion is coming from individuals like each of you that are here with us today. One growing area that we're seeing a lot of is the interest in donors bequesting some of that money to different charities as a part of their greater legacy and estate planning process. So again, that's an area where the TrinityPoint folks are happy to lean on when it comes to that, and certainly happy to lean on us. But it's one area that is getting a lot of attention these days. Now, looking at some of the different vehicles and strategies here today, there are several different options based on your goals, your circumstances, and your needs. And today we're going to be focusing on the donor advised fund piece. Now, just to break down the donor advised fund, you could really think of it in 3 simple steps. So the first step is making a tax deductible charitable contribution to your donor advised fund, right? So you can donate cash, stocks, appreciated assets. We've got a wide net of assets that we're able to accept. And part of the benefit to you is you're able to help avoid capital gains taxes, but you're also able to help yourself when it comes to simplifying the record keeping. So instead of having to keep track of 10, 15, 20 different tax receipts from the different charitable organizations that you would typically support in a given year, by routing those through your centralized donor advised fund, you're able to get one tax receipt that you're then able to turn over to your tax professional to help take advantage of those tax deductions. Now, once you make your donation into the donor advised fund, that second step is where you're able to grow the funds. So we have a menu of investment options to utilize to basically just give more money to charity with that growth. So it's something that charities are able to directly benefit from, you being more strategic and more, having a little bit more intention into the donations that you're looking to make. And then the last step on the granting piece, we've got a tremendous amount of online capabilities from a technology platform standpoint. It's a very easy way to get family involved, and then also the opportunity to gift anonymously. When you're sending gifts to the different charitable organizations, you're able to indicate how you'd like to be acknowledged, if at all. We understand that not every charity that you're looking to support, you're not going to want them to reach out and ask for more donations as the years go on. So that opportunity to gift anonymously is certainly a feature that we're getting a lot of interest in. Now, I touched a bit on it, but looking at the overall assets that you're able to look to donate to the donor advised fund, most folks are typically giving cash, and that works just as well. But our goal here today is to really help show you that there are more efficient ways to fund your philanthropy. Now, what do we mean by that? Again, you're able to donate appreciated assets, stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, even some crypto that we're able to accept. Now, what makes these a good candidate for charitable giving is one, they're highly appreciated. but then also publicly traded and long-term held stocks. And now what makes these so beneficial is that, again, you're able to avoid capital gains taxes. And then you're also generally entitled to that full fair market value of the tax deduction that you are receiving there. So trying to bring that to life here, we're going to look at some of the comparisons between giving cash after selling and then giving the donation outright. So looking on the right-hand side, this is what happens if you're giving the cash. So in this example, we've got $20,000. You paid $20,000 for a particular stock. That stock's currently worth $50,000 now, so $30,000 of gain if you were to sell that. Now, here's what happens if you were to sell that. So you're having the $7,000 of capital gains and Medicare surtaxes, which takes away from the overall amount that the charity gets. So in this case, the charity would receive $42,000 after you've paid those taxes, resulting in a $15,000 tax deduction for you. Now, by comparison, on the left-hand side, this is going to be the visual if you were to gift that same $50,000 worth of stock to Fidelity Charitable. So again, you paid $20,000 for that stock. You have that same $30,000 appreciation with a current value of $50,000. You have eliminated your capital gains taxes, so that is zero, meaning the charity itself is able to get the full $50,000 that you have earmarked for that organization. So more for the charity, and then as you can see that bottom line, $18,000 in a tax deduction for you. So more for the charity, more tax savings that you're able to directly benefit from by looking at donating those appreciated assets to the donor advised fund directly.
So one of the things, I'll just jump in quickly, one of the drums that we beat, and if you all take away one thing from today, it's identify giving the right asset at the right time. So if you're thinking about taking out your checkbook and writing a check, like, encourage you to press pause. If you are a person that plugs in your credit card online, or in these days you can text to give, you can Venmo, you can give on Facebook. Like, there are so many ways that you can give. Our charge in the effort of being more efficient in how you give to charity, it's pause, put your credit card down, put your cell phone down, put your checkbook away, work with the TrinityPoint team, because as Mario showed, there is such tremendous benefit if you are able to identify an appreciated asset. Maybe you have a concentrated position. Maybe you have one of those pesky positions with unknown basis. Like, these are all really, really good. Sometimes they're not obvious candidates for charitable giving, but with the right planning, they can be really smart, really efficient ways that you can give more to the causes you care about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, being, like you mentioned, to piggyback on being smart about the giving, as a result of the tax changes in 2017, the standard deduction was raised significantly. And really what that boils down to is more and more people are taking the standard deduction than ever before. So you may have heard about or may have read about the idea of front loading, or bunching. But that's what I'm going to talk about on this slide. And really simply put, it's the idea of combining 3, 4, or maybe even 5 years worth of giving at once to really maximize your tax benefit. I know there's a lot going on this slide here, so I'll try to boil it down to some simple digestible points here, but really looking to put some numbers behind it. On the left-hand side, if you were to use the illustration of a regular giver making $10,000 gifts consistently every single year for 3 years, you'd get roughly about $300 worth of tax savings every single year. So after a 3-year period, you're realizing about $900 in tax savings. To compare that to the right-hand side, utilizing that bunching strategy, you're combining those 3 years of giving to make a $30,000 donation. What it boils down to you is a significantly higher tax benefit to the tune of about $7,000 in this case. By front-loading that strategy there, you are making a significantly more impactful approach to not only yourself, but to the charities that you're able to support as well. So really, again, just to stress, the benefit to you as the donor is tremendous versus the standard regular donor of making those same donations year in and year out. And I know, Margot, you wanted to give a quick demonstration of our demo site, so I'll pass it back to you now for that.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. And I don't see a lot of action in the chat, but if you have questions that are popping up or if there's anything on your mind, please don't be shy to jump into the chat. So Mario, if you don't mind stop sharing, then I can share my screen.
Margot. Should have stopped now. Should be on you.
Okay.
Margot,
Jim, you want to jump in?
yeah, could you go back to the slide about investing the money?
Is there a specific question,
Margaret?
Jim?
Yeah, the slide with about investing your money where, we've seen, $10,000, $20,000 gifts where you've put the money in, gotten the tax deduction, might not want to give all the money to charity, invest it, and then down the road, the 20,000 turns into 40, 50,000 to give more money to charity down the road. Do you want to walk us through that? And what options, what clients can use in terms of, how they're investing, whether it's mutual funds or individual stocks per se?
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to jump in there. So as Jim said, a really important component of the donor advised fund is the ability for there to be growth over time. So from an investment perspective, there's a few different options. So at Fidelity Charitable, we provide a menu of 23 mutual funds. So it's a pick list that might look similar to your 401k. And you can choose any allocation among the list of 23 funds that you'd like. We have a great program where if an account has a balance of $250,000 or more, then TrinityPoint can actually actively manage that account on your behalf. So what that does is it opens up the universe for investments outside of our 23 options, and TrinityPoint can structure a portfolio that has stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. So there's really good flexibility from an investment perspective. And like all things, it depends on your risk tolerance and your timeline, but there's a lot of really good flexibility there. Mario, if you want to jump out of here, then I can jump into my screen. Thank you. All right, so someone nod if you can see my screen. All right, Jim's nodding. Thank you. So what I'm going to do now is I'll take you through some of the things we've talked about, the tax strategies. People are nodding. That makes sense. I understand the benefit of donating an appreciated asset versus giving cash. When we talked a bit about the donor advised fund, some of you may be scratching your head like, okay, I give the appreciated Twitter stock and then somehow my alma mater gets a check. Like, how does that all actually happen? So this is our public site, fidelitycharitable.org. Any of you can access this following the call. We have a link right here at the top of the screen that allows you to try our online demo. And I'm just going to take us through the process to actually recommend a grant out to one of the charities that one of you will maybe put into the chat for me. So this is what it would look like when you log into the donor advised fund. You really have two options. You have the ability to fund your giving account, which means put in cash or hopefully appreciated securities to fund the account. What I'm going to take you all through is what's the process like to actually grant the funds out to charity. And this is where our donors get to, have all their fun. So we click grant to charity. It's eerily similar to an online shopping situation where you have the ability to click this button that says find a charity. If this was your account and you had used this account before, on this list here down below would populate a list of all the organizations that you've given to in the past. But we will use the search functionality. And if someone wouldn't mind either, shouting out or putting into the chat an organization you all want me to search for.
Somebody said Davidson College.
Davidson College. All right. So people will ask, like, what's Fidelity's database? The good news is this database that we just searched in, it's a direct feed from the IRS. It's updated every month. And what you have the ability to do, and you'll see here, You have the ability to research this charity. So maybe this would link us over to GuideStar, which is a great resource that would help us understand what's Davidson's charitable mission and what kind of programs does Davidson run. We could learn a little more about the organization. Down here, you'll see that there's a note that says, this charity has provided Fidelity Charitable a preferred way of receiving funds. Historically, we used to put a check in the mail and send it down to Davidson in North Carolina. Due to the pandemic and prior, but we had a huge emphasis on it over the throughout the pandemic. Organizations, many are now signed up for EFT with us, which means that once the grant is approved, we will send an electronic fund transfer that will bump directly into Davidson's bank account. So we can click add this charity because this is the organization that we're looking for. And now here we can customize the check that's going to Davidson. So we have the ability to put in the amount. Our minimum grant to send out at any time is $50, but today will be a big shot and we'll send $5,000 Davidson's way. You have the ability to designate the gift. So you'll see at the drop down, you can select from a wide variety of designations for the gift. Really common, especially going to a college like Davidson, you might say it's the annual gift. You could also see down here, we have a lot of people who will use this account to give in memory of someone, or if you're like me, your friends or your neighbors say, I'm running in the New York Marathon or the 5K or the Boston Marathon last week, support me. So you have a lot of different options here, but we'll select annual fund for Davidson. Mario touched on this. With each grant that you send out, you have the ability to choose, how does Davidson acknowledge me for the gift? So most commonly, our donors are acknowledged by their full name and their home address. You could edit it and you could say like class of 86. Or, you can customize it in whichever way you choose. You could also be acknowledged by just the name of the account. So your account might bear the name Robinson Family Charitable Fund, and you might just be acknowledged that way. Or Davidson would get a check and you may choose to be fully anonymous, and it'll say this was made possible by an anonymous donor. Last, customization. You choose when does Davidson get the check. So what we see very common, especially with colleges and universities, is you say, you know what, every year, because Davidson asks for a donation every year, right? On the 1st of December, automatically bump out a check to Davidson, and that way you know that they're getting your regular support. So once you've had the ability to customize this, you add it to the list. You'll see on the right-hand side, it's added to our charitable cart here. So you could keep going. You could add additional charities if you wanted to give, 5 or 10 donations at once. But for the sake of all of your time, we'll keep moving forward. Here you choose just based on how this particular account is invested, how do we want the funds to be pulled out? And then the last step is you just confirm that everything looks good. And here we're acknowledging a few things. We're acknowledging, number one, you're not going to take another tax deduction, right? Because you took your tax deduction when the funds came into the account. You are certifying that you're not getting anything in exchange for the gift and that it's 100% tax deductible. So it's not going to pay for your child's tuition at Davidson. It's just going for pure support for the organization.
Margot, what if you can't find an organization on the?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So when we were at the spot where we were searching, if you can't find what you're looking for, there's a little button that says can't find what you're looking for. You have the ability to type in the name of the organization.
Mario, you want to jump in?
Is an organization is registered with the IRS with a very long, complicated name. You know it as the acronym that it goes by. So we have a whole research team that will roll up our sleeves and do call outs and determine if it's possible for us to actually grant to them.
someone's asking if you can make a grant for an event that you're going to be attending.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So grants from Fidelity Charitable, like I just mentioned, have to be 100% tax deductible and no goods or services can be received. So things that we are not a good fit for, no buying tickets to events, to a gala, to play in a charity golf outing or anything like that. The guidance we provide our donors is if you pay the lowest full ticket price out of pocket to physically get yourself into the event, you could then make a donation from your account. I just totally jumped out.
Mario,
Did I jump? Oh,
nope, you're back.
I'm back. I was like, I just totally got kicked out.
Margot, can I add something
Yeah, sure.
there from my own experience, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but specifically to events, things where you're providing sponsorship and getting return. What I've been able to do in the past personally is have the charity define what the expense with that table is. Let's say it's a $2,500 table, and $720 of it is actually for the food and the benefits. And so I would write the charity a check for the $720, and then the balance of it I would be able to do through the donor advice fund. Is that still good advice?
So our best practice, Mike, is to pay that lowest full ticket price out of pocket. What we're not able to do is, we call it splitting the gift. So saying the tax deductible portion is this and the non-tax deductible portion is that. The question you could really ask yourself is, if you were to write a check, could you get into the event with just that amount? So you don't have the ability to split the gift. And we're always here to talk through specific examples as people have them.
I think somebody wanted to run through the Twitter example one more time.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Mario can pull that up, and maybe Mario, just a moment before you do that. Or we can do that now. That's fine.
Mario, if you could just talk about why, Fidelity Charitable sells the Twitter, in the charitable account, and why the donor shouldn't sell the Twitter outside the account, just to make sure everybody understands that.
Yeah, Jim, Jim, can you hear me? It's Margot.
Yes.
Yeah, so very simply, the benefit of donating the Twitter in kind as opposed to selling it first is, if you donate it in kind, you get two benefits. You get the benefit of the fair market value tax deduction, which is the average of the high and low on the day we receive it. So you're getting a full deduction. And then we're going to turn around, we're going to sell the stock almost immediately. And when we do, you avoid paying any of the capital gains tax. As opposed to, you sell the Twitter position in your own taxable portfolio, you pay the cap gains, you might pay the Medicare surtax, and then you're donating the excess proceeds. So think of the two-pronged benefit of the fair market value tax deduction and the avoidance of the capital gains tax.
Jim, I just unmuted myself. I asked the question that, so just for the math, and I think Michael might have responded. You're basically taking the full deduction for the 50,000. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting.
And we have one of the things that the TrinityPoint team has, and we can arm all of you with it too. On our public site, we have a calculator that allows you to plug and play. So if you have certain positions that you're thinking about, you can actually put in your basis, you put in the value today, you put in your tax bracket, and it'll spit out a result that looks just like this. What if you gave that position in kind, or what if you sold it first, paid the tax, and then what you'd have to give?
So the last question I had, and I was going to type it, but since I unmuted myself, I'll just ask it. How does custody work? Like if there isn't how do you get those shares over to you? Do you do that through the web portal? Or is
Yeah,
that
you can.
something- Okay.
Yeah, you can do it all online, depending on where it's coming from, Brian. If Jim and his team can absolutely help you with it.
We usually send it to Fidelity Charitable, Brian.
Okay. Okay, great.
Margot, why don't you touch on esoteric investments like crypto and maybe private company basically? Will you accept different esoteric investments?
Yeah, for sure. So in addition to taking your Twitter stock, your appreciated publicly traded stock, we do also have the ability to take non-publicly traded assets. So that looks like private business interests, private equity, hedge fund interests. We do a lot with real estate developer folks that have lots of different entities. We're seeing an increase in cryptocurrency donations this year. So again, in the spirit of being efficient in the way you fund your giving, think of your publicly traded basket, but then also think of any of those private investments that you might have that you've held long-term that have appreciated. We have 4 attorneys on our staff at Fidelity Charitable, and last year they took in about 650 donations of a non-publicly traded flavor. So we do a high volume, and we have a diligence process that we would take you all through. But if you have any of those LLC, LP, C Corp, S Corp interests, in the right circumstance, they can make for a very efficient charitable gift.
And do you automatically sell those or try and sell those?
Yeah, so our goal when we take in something that's not publicly traded, we like to find liquidity in 12 to 18 months. When we take in the asset, we can't know for certain how we're going to get out or how we're going to find liquidity. But we do like to learn of multiple different paths to liquidity in about a year.
Suppose the liquidity event is less than the deduction that was taken. Is there any clawback at that point? If you took a deduction of $100,000, appraised asset, but you're only able to liquidate it for $50,000.
Yeah, it's a good question, Brian. And without getting in the weeds, we could certainly connect after. Whenever you donate something that's not publicly traded, you, the donor, are required to get a qualified independent appraisal.
Okay.
That's what's going to substantiate your deduction. So if the qualified independent appraiser said this was worth $100,000, on December or October 19th when you gave it, when the world is different in 6 months and it only sells for 50, you have your qualified independent appraisal to stand behind.
Okay, great. That's excellent. Thanks.
Yeah. So we're running up close on time. I do want to touch on one last component, which is around legacy. And, we've seen a lot of people in the last 18 months redoing their estate plan and thinking about their legacy and having conversations with their family, as maybe some people were spending more time under the same roof than usual. On this account, you have the ability to elect successors. So think of them like beneficiaries on all the accounts you have with TrinityPoint. So when you establish an account, successors can either be individuals like children or family members, or you can name specific charities to receive the funds after you've passed away. So I would say broad strokes, we're seeing more and more people incorporate a charitable component into their estate plan. X% of my estate goes to charity. And with the donor advised fund, you have great flexibility to either name specific charities, or when you're naming your kids, when you pass away, your children aren't getting the charitable dollars, but they then have the ability to recommend grants out of the account to support the causes they care about. And the thing I like to end with, especially this time of year, is just sharing one of the ways that we see families and different generations coming around the same table and having the charitable conversation is we have something called a gift for giving. So think of it like a charitable gift certificate. And this time last year, I worked with a couple. They have 8 grandkids. The youngest is 7. The oldest was about 18. And the grandparents said around the holidays, like, I'm not going to ship gifts across the country. None of us are going to be together. So in lieu of presents, we're going to give them a gift for giving. So from the grandparents' account, $100 was allocated to each of the 7 grandchildren. And the grandmother was funny and said, in January, I've got a Zoom date on the calendar, and all the grandkids are going to tell us and tell their cousins, here are the charities we chose and here's why. So it doesn't have to be the holidays, but it tends to be a really good time of year to get everybody around the table and have a conversation with your family about what's important to you and where you're giving and why.
Any other questions?
Margot, I wanted to mention, this is Mike Smiley again. My wife and I have been doing that exact same thing with our 13 nieces and nephews for the last 6 or 7 years. So in their birthday card, they still get their $20, but then they get a certificate from us, and they get to designate a nonprofit, but they have to explain why. And it has been one of the coolest things. And most of them take it very seriously. And I think it's just instilling that giving into the next generation. So just an anecdotal, yes, I think that's an awesome idea. I hope that more of us will do it.
That is so cool. Thank you for sharing. One other thing, Jim, that we had talked about prior to the call was talking about the qualified charitable distributions. And we didn't talk about that yet, but it might be a question that some of you have, which is giving directly from your IRAs to charity. So the qualified charitable distribution is, if you're of the age to take your required minimum distribution, you can send up to $100,000 directly to a charity without paying the tax. So another good strategy as you're thinking about what's the best way for me to give at the end of the year, definitely chat with the TrinityPoint folks who can, talk you through the benefits of making a gift that way as well.
Especially if you're not itemizing on your tax return. And you have a standard, if you have an RMD of $10,000 and you want to reduce the income, you can give $5,000 to charity, and that'll reduce your income by $5,000, but still satisfy the distribution. So we'd be happy to talk to people about that. Questions?
Yeah, Jim, you and I think you spoke about this, but just to confirm, if somebody puts money in and life goes upside down after that, is there any way to get that money out and pay the tax on it? Or is once I see a lot of heads already shaking now.
Once you've given, it's there.
Okay, I got it. You had said that. Just confirm it, buddy.
It's a good question. It's an irrevocable contribution, and that's how you're able to take your tax deduction. So it's not
understood.
possible to get it back. Yeah.
Okay, understood.
Good question.
Margot, I want to thank you for everything you and your team have done, and we're here to answer any questions if anybody would like to speak about charitable donations. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.